I never imagined my wife would leave me stranded in a foreign country with nothing but a cold text message and an empty bank account. But that's exactly what Dahlia did. I'm sitting here in this cramped Roman cafe, staring at my phone like it's going to suddenly come alive and tell me this is all a mistake. The espresso in front of me has gone cold. I can't afford another one. Hell, I'm not even sure I can afford this one. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you couldn't see the knife until it was already buried in your back? That's where I am right now. 56 years old, architect by trade, fool by circumstance. The waiter keeps glancing at my table. He knows. They always know when you're drowning. My hands are shaking as I read her message for the 100th time. I'm safe. I need some time to think. Don't try to find me. 15 words. That's all it took to erase 24 years of marriage. No explanation. No apology. Just 15 words that might as well have been a death sentence. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. 3 days ago, Dahlia kissed me goodbye and said she was going to Florence with some friends she'd met. New experiences, she called it. Finding myself. I smiled and told her to have fun. I even gave her extra cash because I'm the kind of idiot who thinks love means trust without question. Sunday night came and went. No Dahlia. Monday morning, I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. By Tuesday, I was calling hospitals. By Wednesday, I was at the police station trying to explain in broken Italian that my wife had vanished. The officer looked at me with pity in his eyes and said something about American women and Italian romance. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to hit something, anything. Then Thursday night, that text arrived. And suddenly, I wasn't a worried husband anymore. I was just a man who'd been left behind. The worst part. I'm broke. The firm I work for just closed the Italian branch 2 weeks ago. Budget cuts, they said. They gave me a severance check that barely covered last month's rent. I've been surviving on what Dahlia and I had in our joint account, but when I tried to buy a plane ticket home this morning, my card was declined. I called the bank. Frozen account. She'd called them first, told them there was suspicious activity. My own wife reported me like I was some kind of thief. The customer service rep was very sorry, but these things take time to sort out. 7 to 10 business days. I don't have 7 to 10 days. My landlord wants me out by Friday. That's tomorrow. So here I sit in this cafe, watching Romans live their beautiful lives, while mine crumbles like the ancient ruins outside the Colosseum. I built buildings for 20 years. Designed homes where families would make memories. And now I can't even keep a roof over my own head. The waiter is walking toward me now. I can see the bill in his hand. I reach for my wallet, praying there's enough cash left for one more day of dignity. But when I open it, I see something that makes my blood run cold. Our wedding photo, the one I keep tucked behind my credit cards. Except someone has drawn a line through my face. Dahlia did this before she left. She planned this whole thing. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you loved, stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about revenge, forgiveness, and who I really was. 24 years earlier, I met Dahlia Wade at a community fundraiser in Charlotte. I was 32, fresh off my first major architectural project, and completely out of my element at a charity gala. I didn't do crowds. I didn't do small talk. I did blueprints and coffee and silence. But then she walked up to me. She was wearing this red dress that somehow made everyone else in the room disappear. Her smile was confident, almost dangerous. She looked at the drink in my hand and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here." I laughed because it was true. She said, "Me too. Want to get out of here and find some real food." We ended up at a diner on the edge of town, talking until 3 in the morning. She told me about her dreams of traveling the world, starting her own business, living a life that mattered. I told her about buildings and angles and how good design could change the way people felt about their own lives. She listened like I was saying something profound instead of just rambling about load-bearing walls. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony with 50 people and too many flowers. My mother cried. Dahlia's father gave a speech about how I better take care of his little girl. I promised I would. I meant it with everything I had. For the first decade, we were solid. Not perfect, but solid. I worked long hours at the firm, climbing from junior architect to senior partner. Dahlia started a small event planning business that did well enough to keep her busy and happy. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, even though we never had kids. That was the first crack, looking back now. Dahlia kept saying she wasn't ready. Then it became, maybe next year. Then it became, I don't think I'm meant to be a mother. I didn't push. I figured some women just know themselves better than others. I figured love was enough. I was wrong about a lot of things. By year 15, something had shifted. She became restless. She'd stare out windows like she was searching for something I couldn't see. She'd talk about friends who were traveling, living in New York, doing exciting things. I suggested we take more vacations. We went to Mexico, Colorado, Boston. But it was never enough. Then came the Italy opportunity. A major firm wanted me to oversee a restoration project in Rome for 18 months. The pay was incredible. The experience was once in a lifetime. When I told Dahlia, her eyes lit up like they hadn't in years. "This is it," she said. "This is exactly what we need. A complete reset." I believed her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. I thought maybe distance from our routine would bring back the woman I married. I thought cobblestone streets and wine country and Italian sunsets would remind us why we chose each other in the first place. So I said yes to Rome. I said yes to 18 months abroad. I said yes to uprooting our entire life because I thought I was saving our marriage. What I didn't know was that Dahlia wasn't looking for a reset. She was looking for an exit strategy. And I had just handed her the perfect escape plan wrapped in European charm and an ocean between us. The plane tickets were booked. Our house was rented out. My excitement was real. But on the morning we left for the airport, I caught Dahlia on the phone in our bedroom. She was whispering to someone, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. When she saw me watching, she hung up fast and said it was just her sister wishing us luck. Rome was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Every corner had history carved into stone. Every piazza had lovers holding hands like the world might end if they let go. Dahlia and I rented a small apartment in Trastevere, one of those narrow streets where laundry hangs between buildings and old women sell flowers from wooden carts. For the first few weeks, it felt like a dream. We'd wake up to church bells and coffee smells drifting through open windows. I'd head to the restoration site, and Dahlia would spend her days exploring. She'd come home with stories about markets and museums, her cheeks flushed from walking. But by week 6, things started changing. The stories got vaguer. The walks got longer. She started coming home after dark, sometimes after midnight. When I'd ask where she'd been, she'd wave me off with words like, "just wandering," or "lost track of time." I told myself I was being paranoid. She was in a new country, living out her adventure. Who was I to clip her wings? I worked 10-hour days anyway. What right did I have to demand she sit at home waiting for me? Then the overnight trips started. First it was a weekend in Florence with some women she met at a cafe. Then it was 3 days in Venice with a tour group. Then it was Positano, Milan, Naples. Always leaving on short notice. always with people I never met. I'd ask to come along. She'd say it was girls only, or the group was already full, or I needed to focus on work. Every excuse sounded reasonable. Every excuse felt like a lie. One night I came home early and found her on the balcony talking on the phone. She was speaking in a low voice, almost a whisper. When she heard me, she spun around like I'd caught her stealing. She said it was her event planning client back home, that the time difference made conversations weird. But North Carolina was 6 hours behind. It was 3 in the afternoon there. Nobody whispers to clients at 3 in the afternoon. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went to take a shower. I stood under the water wondering when exactly I'd become the kind of man who accepted lies just to avoid confrontation. The distance between us grew wider. We stopped eating dinner together. We stopped talking about anything real. She'd sleep facing the wall. I'd sleep staring at the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster and wondering if this was just what marriage became after so many years. Then came the Friday in late September. Dahlia came out of the bedroom with a packed bag and that same bright smile she used to give me when we first met. She kissed my cheek and said she was going to Florence for the weekend with friends. She'd be back Sunday night. I watched her walk out the door, and something in my gut screamed that this was different. This was wrong. But I ignored it. I always ignored it. Sunday night came. No Dahlia. I texted her. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. Monday morning, I tried again. Nothing. By Tuesday, I was frantic, calling every hospital within 100 miles, trying to explain in my terrible Italian that my wife was missing. Wednesday, I filed a report with the police. They took notes and gave me sympathetic looks that said they'd seen this story before. American woman disappears in Italy. She's not missing. She's choosing to be gone. I refused to believe it. Not Dahlia. Not my wife. Not after 24 years. But Thursday night, sitting alone in our apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from her number. I'm safe. I need some time to think. Don't try to find me. I read it 10 times. 20 times. I tried calling back. Blocked. I tried texting. No response. Just those 15 words hanging in the air like a noose. The days after that text were the longest of my life. I'd wake up thinking maybe I dreamed it. Then I'd check my phone and see those words still sitting there, cold and final. I stopped going to work. What was the point? My wife had vanished, and nobody seemed to care except me. I stayed in that apartment for 2 weeks, waiting. Waiting for her to come back. Waiting for an explanation. Waiting for anything that would make this make sense. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just sat by the window watching the street below, hoping I'd see her walking up with some ridiculous story about a phone dying or getting lost or having some kind of breakdown. But she never came. On day 16, my landlord knocked on the door. He was a short man with kind eyes and broken English. He told me the rent was due 3 days ago. I nodded and said I'd pay him by the end of the week. He looked at me like he knew I was lying. I checked our joint bank account. Empty. Dahlia had cleaned it out. Every penny we'd saved for this trip, gone. I called the bank in North Carolina. That account was frozen. Suspicious activity, they said. My own wife had reported me. I tried calling her family. Her sister Angela picked up on the 3rd ring. I started explaining what happened, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Angela cut me off mid-sentence. Clinton, she told us you two were taking a break. She said you needed space. That's not what happened. She disappeared. She took all our money. Silence on the other end. Then Angela said quietly, she told us you'd say that. She said you might get desperate. The line went dead. That's when it hit me. Dahlia hadn't just left. She'd burned every bridge behind her. She'd poisoned every well. She'd made sure that when I came crawling back, nobody would believe me. On day 21, my boss from the firm called. The Italian project was shutting down immediately. Budget cuts. They were sorry. My last check would be mailed to my U.S. address. When I explained I needed it wired because I was stranded, he said company policy didn't allow that. I was officially broke in a foreign country with no wife, no job, and no way home. I sold my watch to pay for another week of rent. Then I sold my laptop. Then my good shoes. I was rationing meals to one a day, drinking tap water to fill my stomach when the hunger got too bad. By week 5, the landlord stopped being kind. He told me I had 3 days to leave or he'd call the police. I spent those 3 days applying for emergency loans, calling the embassy, begging old college friends for money I knew I'd never pay back. On the last day, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and walked out of that apartment into the rain. I had 400 euros to my name and nowhere to go. I bought the cheapest flight I could find back to Charlotte. One way. No return. Landing in 5 days. I spent those 5 days sleeping in train stations and youth hostels, eating bread and cheap cheese, trying to figure out what I'd say to people when I got home. How do you explain that your wife erased you from her life? How do you admit you didn't see it coming? The flight back was brutal. Middle seat. Crying baby. Broken headphones. I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything, looking for the moment I could have stopped this. The moment I could have saved us. When we landed in Charlotte, I turned my phone back on. One new message. From a number I didn't recognize. Heard you made it back. Good luck, Clinton. You're going to need it. I took a cab to our house using the last of my cash. The whole ride, I kept rehearsing what I'd say. Maybe this was all a huge misunderstanding. Maybe Dahlia had come back and was waiting to explain everything. Maybe we could fix this. The cab dropped me off at the curb. The house looked the same. Same blue shutters. Same garden Dahlia used to fuss over. Same mailbox with our last name painted on the side. But something felt wrong. I walked up to the front door and tried my key. It didn't fit. I tried again, thinking maybe I was using the wrong one. Nothing. The locks had been changed. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. I walked around to the back, dragging my suitcases through the grass. The curtains were open in the kitchen. I could see inside. And that's when I saw them. Dahlia was standing at our kitchen counter, laughing. Her head was thrown back, her hair catching the light the way it used to when she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. But she wasn't laughing at me. She was laughing at him. Curtis Brandt. Her ex-boyfriend from college. The same Curtis I'd hired 3 years ago to renovate our kitchen because Dahlia said he was the best contractor in town, and we should support people we know. He had his arm around her waist. She was leaning into him like they'd been doing this for years. Like I'd never existed. I stood there in my own backyard, watching my wife live a life that had no space for me in it. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything but watch. Then Curtis kissed her. And she kissed him back. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Property records are public, Clinton. Might want to check yours. My hands shook as I pulled up the county website. I searched our address. The house was no longer in my name. Dahlia had transferred the deed to herself 3 months ago. 3 months. While we were in Italy. While I was working 80-hour weeks thinking I was building our future. She'd planned this. Every single piece. I stumbled backward, my suitcase catching on the patio stones. The noise must have carried because Curtis looked toward the window. For a second, Our eyes met. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look guilty. He just looked at me like I was a stranger trespassing on his property. Then he closed the curtains. I walked back to the street in a daze. My truck was still parked where I'd left it 2 months ago. I'd paid for long-term parking at the airport lot, one of the last smart things I'd done. I climbed into the driver's seat and just sat there. Everything I'd built was gone. The house I'd designed. The marriage I'd protected. The life I'd sacrificed everything for. Gone. I had $200 left. No home. No job. No wife. No friends who'd take my calls after Dahlia's lies. I started the engine and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove until I found a rest stop outside town. I parked in the back corner, reclined my seat, and stared at the ceiling of my truck. This was my life now. 56 years old, sleeping in a vehicle, destroyed by the woman I'd loved more than anything. But as I lay there in the dark, something shifted inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was clarity. Dahlia thought she'd broken me. She thought leaving me with nothing meant I was nothing. She was wrong. And one day, I'd make sure she knew exactly how wrong she was. I spent the first night in my truck telling myself it was temporary. Just one night until I figured things out. But one night became 3. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. I'd park in different spots so nobody would notice. Walmart parking lots. Rest stops. Behind closed shopping centers. I washed up in gas station bathrooms. I bought the cheapest food I could find. Ramen noodles. Day-old bread. Gas station coffee that tasted like battery acid. I told myself this was rock bottom, that things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Things can always get worse. One morning, I woke up to someone knocking on my window. A cop. He asked if I was all right, if I needed help. I lied and said I was just taking a break from a long drive. He looked at the blanket in my back seat, the bags of clothes, the empty food containers. He knew. But he was kind enough not to say it. He told me I couldn't stay there and drove off. I sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out where a man goes when he has nowhere to go. That's when I made the call I'd been avoiding. Danny Rector, an old college buddy who ran a construction company. We hadn't talked in 5 years, but he'd always been solid. I dialed his number expecting voicemail. He picked up on the second ring. Clinton Wade. Thought you were off living the Italian dream. I almost hung up. Pride is a terrible thing when you're drowning. But something in me broke and I just said it. Danny, I need work. Any work. I'm in a bad spot. Silence. Then he said, "You free tomorrow morning?" That's how I became a construction supervisor at 56 years old. The pay was nothing compared to what I used to make, but it was honest work. Danny didn't ask questions. He just handed me a hard hat and a clipboard and said, "We start at 6. I showed up every day at 5:45. I worked harder than men half my age. I didn't complain. I didn't make excuses. I just worked. Because work was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. After 2 months, I saved enough to rent a room in a house on the edge of town. It was small. The wallpaper was peeling. The shower barely worked. But it was mine. I had a bed. I had a roof. I had a reason to wake up. Slowly, I started rebuilding. Not the life I had before. Something different. Something that belonged to only me. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Clinton. This is Margaret Perry. I don't know if you remember me. Mrs. Perry. The widow of Richard Perry, a client I designed a summer home for 15 years ago. Her husband had died 3 years back. I'd sent flowers and a card. "Of course I remember you, Mrs. Perry. How are you?" "I'm well, dear. But I need help. My late husband left me several properties, and I don't trust a soul to manage them properly." Then I remembered you. Richard always said you were the most honest man he'd ever met. She paused. I could hear her breathing on the other end. "Would you consider managing them for me? I can't pay much at first, but there's real potential if you're interested." I looked around my tiny rented room, at the life I was barely holding together with duct tape and desperation. "Mrs. Perry, I'd be honored." That phone call changed everything. She had 4 rental properties scattered around town. Nothing fancy. Small houses that needed work. But she gave me full control. Fix them up. Find tenants. Take a percentage of the rent. I worked construction during the day and renovated her properties at night. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. For the first time since Italy, I had purpose. 6 months later, I'd turned those 4 properties into 8. I bought 2 more using money I'd saved and a small loan Mrs. Perry co-signed. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't broken anymore either. And late at night, when I'd drive past my old house and see the lights on and Dahlia's car in the driveway, I didn't feel angry. I felt patient, because I knew something she didn't. I was building something she could never touch. And one day, when the time was right, she'd see exactly what she'd thrown away. 5 years is a long time to rebuild a life. Long enough to forget what rock bottom felt like. Long enough to remember why you survived it. By the time I turned 61, I owned 23 properties across 3 counties. I'd moved from construction supervisor to property developer. I had a small office downtown with my name on the door. Wade Property Group. Simple. Clean. Mine. I didn't get there by luck. I got there by showing up every single day when I wanted to quit. By making decisions that scared me. By trusting my instincts when everyone else said I was crazy. Mrs. Perry became more than a client. She became family. She'd invite me over for Sunday dinners and tell me stories about her late husband. She'd give me advice about business and life. She never asked about Dahlia. She didn't need to. She could see I was a man who'd been broken and chose to build himself back better. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at 84, she left me half her estate. The other half went to her daughter in California. But that half was enough to change everything. I used it to buy land on the outskirts of town. 12 acres of nothing but possibility. I designed a development from scratch. Luxury homes with clean lines and open spaces. Modern but warm. The kind of places where families could grow and memories could happen. I called it Wade's Crossing. It sold out in 8 months. Suddenly, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I hired a small staff. I bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy. I didn't need flashy. I needed peace. And I had it. For the first time in decades, I had real peace. But peace doesn't mean you forget. It just means you've made room for what matters more than revenge. Then one afternoon, I heard the rumors. Small-town gossip travels faster than wildfire. Curtis Brandt's contracting business had gone under. Bad investments. Angry clients. Lawsuits. He'd lost everything. And Dahlia. She'd sold our old house to cover his debts. They were renting now. Fighting in public. The kind of couple everyone whispers about at the grocery store. I didn't feel happy hearing it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt nothing. They'd made their choices. They were living with the consequences. That had nothing to do with me. But apparently, I had something to do with them. I was at the Wade's Crossing construction site one Tuesday morning, reviewing plans with my site manager, when I saw her walking across the gravel lot like she'd been invited, like she belonged there. Dahlia. She looked older, thinner. Her clothes were nice but worn. Her hair was shorter. But it was definitely her. She stopped about 10 feet away and just stared at me. For a second, neither of us spoke. 5 years of silence stretched between us like a canyon. Then she said my name. Clinton. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. I turned to face her fully. My site manager looked between us, sensing something heavy in the air. "I'll give you 2 a minute," he said, walking away. Dahlia stepped closer. She tried to smile, but it came out wrong. Desperate. "I didn't know you were back in town. I thought you were still in Italy or maybe moved somewhere else. I didn't know you were doing all this." She gestured at the construction site, at the sign that read Wade's Crossing, a Wade Property Group development. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She laughed nervously. "You look good. Really good. I heard things were going well for you, but I didn't realize how well." Still, I said nothing. Her smile faded. "Curtis and we're not together anymore. Things didn't work out. I made mistakes, Clinton. Big ones. And I've been thinking maybe we could talk. Really talk. About everything." I watched her fidget with her purse strap. I watched her avoid eye contact. I watched her play the same game she'd always played. Act vulnerable. Get sympathy. Get what she wanted. But I wasn't the same man she'd left in Italy. "What do you want to talk about, Dahlia?" She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Us. What happened? What could still happen? I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But people change, Clinton. I've changed." I nodded slowly. "You're right. People do change." Her smile returned. "But some doors close forever." The smile died. "Come by my office tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. We can talk properly there." I walked away before she could respond. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because tomorrow, Dahlia was going to learn exactly what she'd lost. Dahlia showed up at 9:45. 15 minutes early. That was new. The old Dahlia was always fashionably late. This version was desperate. My assistant Rachel greeted her in the lobby. Rachel was 26, sharp as a blade, and had no idea who Dahlia was. "Just another appointment on the schedule. Mr. Wade will see you shortly. Can I get you water or coffee?" I watched through my office window as Dahlia looked around. At the framed photos of properties I'd developed. At the awards on the wall. At the mahogany furniture and the view overlooking downtown. She was seeing it all for the first time. The empire I'd built from the ashes of what she'd burned. I let her wait 10 minutes. Not out of cruelty. Out of principle. I had a business to run. When Rachel finally walked her in, Dahlia's eyes went straight to the nameplate on my desk. Wade Property Group, President, Clinton Wade. She sat down slowly, like the chair might disappear under her. "You did all this in 5 years?" I leaned back in my chair. 5 years and 3 months. "But who's counting?" She laughed, but it was hollow. "I always knew you were talented, Clinton. But this is incredible." "Thank you." Silence filled the space between us. She was waiting for me to make it easy, to crack a joke or offer her a lifeline. I did neither. Finally, she spoke. "I know what I did was unforgivable. Leaving you in Italy. Taking the money. The house. All of it. I was confused and selfish, and I thought Curtis was what I wanted. And was he? She looked down at her hands. No, he wasn't. He cheated on me 6 months after we got together. Then his business failed. Then the lawsuits started. Everything fell apart. And I realized I'd thrown away the best thing in my life for nothing. That's unfortunate. She looked up sharply. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Dahlia? That you understand. That maybe we could try again. That I could fix this. I stood up and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me. My city now. The one I'd rebuilt myself in. Do you know what I learned in Italy? I asked. When you left me there with nothing? She didn't answer. I learned that the man I was died in that apartment. The man who believed love meant accepting disrespect. The man who put someone else's happiness before his own dignity. That man is gone, Dahlia. Clinton. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. You made a choice. You chose Curtis. You chose to destroy what we built. And now you're living with those consequences. Tears started running down her face. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but please. Give me another chance. I'll do anything. I turned to face her. I don't want you to do anything. I want you to understand something. The best revenge isn't hurting someone back. It's becoming so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. So this is revenge? All of this? No. This is freedom. This is what happens when you stop waiting for someone to save you and save yourself instead. She stood up, her voice rising. You think you're better than me now because you have money and a fancy office? You think that makes you the winner here? I don't think about winners or losers anymore, Dahlia. I just think about peace. And I finally have it. She grabbed her purse, anger replacing the vulnerability. You'll regret this. One day you'll realize you threw away a second chance at happiness. I'm not throwing it away. I'm just not finding it with you. She stormed toward the door, then stopped. She turned back, her face red and tear-streaked. I loved you, Clinton. I really did. I nodded. I believe you. But love without respect is just pretty words. And I buried the man who believed pretty words were enough. She left without another word. Rachel appeared in the doorway moments later. Everything okay, Mr. Wade? I smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't been able to give in years. Everything's perfect, Rachel. Just closing an old chapter. Through the window, I watched Dahlia walk to her car. An old sedan. Faded paint. Nothing like the luxury SUV she used to drive. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine. I didn't feel victorious watching her leave. I felt free. Because revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about taking back the power they stole and building something they can never touch. A month passed. Then 2. Life went on the way it does when you're finally living for yourself instead of someone else's memory. I broke ground on a new project. I hired 3 more staff members. I even went on a date with a woman I met at a fundraiser. It didn't go anywhere, but it felt good to try. Then one afternoon, Rachel buzzed my office. Mr. Wade? There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. I knew before Rachel said the name. Send her away, Rachel. Sir, she's crying pretty hard. She says she just needs 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. 5 minutes. That's all. Dahlia looked worse than the last time. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her makeup was smudged. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She sat down without being asked. I lost my apartment. Curtis took everything in the breakup, including my savings. I'm staying with my sister, but she can only keep me for another week. I have nowhere to go, Clinton. I'm sorry to hear that. That's it? You're just sorry. What do you want me to say? I want you to help me, please. I'm not asking for us to get back together. I'm just asking for help. For old time's sake. I leaned forward, folding my hands on my desk. Dahlia, do you remember what you said to me in Italy? Through that text. She looked confused. I don't. You said you needed time to think. You told me not to try to find you. And then you disappeared, took all my money, and left me homeless in a foreign country. Do you remember that? Her face went pale. I slept in my truck for weeks because of you. I ate one meal a day. I washed up in gas station bathrooms. I lost everything because you decided I wasn't worth an explanation. Clinton, I was wrong. Yes, you were. And now you're asking me to be your safety net after you cut the rope yourself. She started sobbing. Full, body-shaking sobs. Please. I have nothing. No one. You're the only person I can turn to. I stood up and walked around the desk. I handed her a tissue box. She took one with shaking hands. I'm not going to help you financially, Dahlia. But I will tell you what someone told me when I was at my lowest. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing everything. Because then you find out who you really are. That's easy for you to say now that you're successful. No, it's easy for me to say because I lived it. I was where you are. And I survived by working harder than I ever had in my life. By humbling myself. By asking for help from people who owed me nothing. So you're saying I deserve this? I'm saying you created this. And only you can fix it. Not me. Not anyone else. You. She stood up, anger flashing through the tears. I came here thinking you were a good man. But you're just bitter and cruel. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a man who learned that some people don't deserve a second chance to hurt you. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. You know what? You're right. I don't deserve your help. I don't deserve anything from you. But I hope one day you find someone who makes you happy. Because this, she gestured around the office, all of this means nothing if you're still alone. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat down at my desk and stared at the space where she'd been sitting. Her words echoed in my mind. All of this means nothing if you're still alone. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. There's a difference. Loneliness is wanting someone to fill the empty spaces. Being alone is being comfortable with the space you've created. And I'd spent 5 years creating a space that was finally, completely mine. That evening, I drove past my old house. New family living there now. Kids playing in the yard. The garden was different. The shutters had been repainted. It wasn't mine anymore. And that was okay. I drove to Wade's Crossing and walked through the development. Families were moving in. Building lives. Making memories. And I'd made that possible. That night, I slept better than I had in years. 6 months after Dahlia's last visit, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. I held it for a long time, debating whether to open it. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Part of me needed to know what she had to say. I opened it. Clinton, I'm writing this from a small apartment in Georgia. I moved here 2 months ago to start over. I got a job as an assistant at an event planning company. It's not much, but it's honest work. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm learning about the person I became and why I made the choices I made. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right. Losing everything taught me who I really am. And I don't like her very much. But I'm working on it. I hope you're well. I hope you found happiness. You deserved better than me. I see that now. Take care. D. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She was on her own journey now, and I was on mine. And those paths didn't need to cross ever again. A week later, I flew to Italy for the first time since everything fell apart. I told myself it was for business. A potential investment opportunity in Rome. But really, I needed to face the place where my old life ended. I walked through Trastevere. Past the apartment we'd rented. Past the cafe where I'd sat broke and broken. Past the streets where I'd wandered trying to understand what went wrong. It all looked different now. Or maybe I looked different. I stood on a bridge over the Tiber River as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that looked like hope. And I realized something profound. Dahlia didn't destroy me in Italy. She freed me. She freed me from a marriage built on obligation instead of respect. She freed me from being the kind of man who measured his worth by someone else's love. She freed me from the fear of starting over. And in that freedom, I'd built something real. I took the letter out of my pocket. The one Dahlia had sent. I held it over the water for a moment, then let it go. It floated for a second before the current pulled it under. That was the last piece of her I needed to release. When I flew back to the States, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I'd finally forgiven myself for being the kind of man who stayed too long in something that was already dying. 3 months later, I met someone. Her name was Julia. She was a teacher with kind eyes and a laugh that sounded like home. We met at a community center where I was donating furniture from one of my renovations. She didn't know about Dahlia. She didn't know about Italy or the truck or the rock bottom. She just knew Clinton Wade, the quiet man who built homes and liked his coffee black. And that's exactly who I wanted to be. Not the man who was betrayed. Not the man who survived. Just a man who learned that the best revenge is a life well lived. Because when Dahlia came back and couldn't believe her eyes, it wasn't about making her suffer. It was about showing her that some people don't need you to be whole. Some people find wholeness in the breaking. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone tried to tear you down, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Sometimes the best thing we can do is remind each other that we're not alone in the rebuilding. Hit that subscribe button, be part of this family, and let's keep inspiring each other. Because every ending is just a new beginning waiting to happen. Retry.